So, I got a first game by a first-time developer, and in many ways, I'm kind of a first-time YouTuber. Just ignore that first video.
Phoenix.
The Forbidden Arts, developed by Stingbot Games, is a side-scrolling action game that very much feels like Zelda 2. Not just because of the 3D overworld and then going into the 2D perspective, but also in how I feel demanding and attentive you have to be for the combat. Which starts off as relatively simple, which most enemies that you can wail on until they die, then leading to enemies that have very specific ways to kill them. And to be honest, at certain points, I literally thought that perhaps the game was broken because I didn't know how to kill certain enemies. Also, most enemies can take you down in under 2 shots, which becomes extremely frustrating with just jumping around the world and then just getting nicked by like the back of a bat wing and then dying. But oddly enough, I felt like extremely satisfied when I understood how an enemy works and then was able to take them down using the skills of all of the built-on corpses that I built up to that point. While I found the combat interesting, although simple, some of the biggest hurdles in this game is a hurdle that you would find in most new developers, where the game bugs out, you have weird collision with geometry in the world, sometimes you end up in a pit but you are stuck between death and life and you have to restart the level, and also checkpointing at certain points in this game is bad, so restarting a level will always restart you from the beginning even if you've completed 90% of said level. It's a curious case of a game that lacks a lot of polish and refinement, but you can see the beginning seeds of like, oh, that's an interesting way you designed the levels to, incentivize the player to travel around by picking up hidden items that will make the character stronger later on. Unfortunately, it is intermingled with a narrative that I could care less about, and sometimes levels that feel a little too big and a little too sprawling to the point where I'm not sure where I'm going, and then you are forced to backtrack, which I think is just the intent of the developer. It's hard to say, because at this point the game roadblocks you after 2 levels that I believe will be released upon the actual release date of the game. So at this point you're only 2 levels in and it hard blocks with you are in the early release area. So a little too early to make a final judgment, but at this point I am optimistically curious about something that may or may not pay off, but I'm willing to give a new developer a shot. I'd only ask, as this developer adds like the remainder of their game, they also give the option for players to skip cutscenes, because let's be honest, a narrative that is so boilerplate that I've literally forgot it as I was writing it down probably doesn't need to be shown by everyone. You could probably just let them skip to the actual gameplay and combat, which, in my opinion, deserves a much larger shake than it's getting.